very successful Across Retail Talks. My name is Reinhard Winivater. I'm the publisher of Across Magazine. And I'm really very pleased that so many people across Europe are here today. Welcome to a very special talk. Our topic today, the new role of retail. A really top-class discussion group is ready. Klaus Striebich, as usual, will lead the discussion as the expert moderator. I ask you, please take part in the discussion and use and ask questions. Use the chat function. And in the next few days, we will send a summary and a video of this discussion via our newsletter. So that's it from my side at the beginning. I now hand over to Klaus Striebich. Klaus, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Reinhard, and welcome also from my side to our second edition of Across Retail Talks 2021. The new role of retail is the headline. So retail is not dead, I have to say. Maybe some retailers are, what you read in the newspapers, but not the ones who are our panelists today. So very welcome to Cindy Anderson from Inca Centers, Markus Weil from Spar Group, and Chris Icre from Icre International. I come later to that. Retail is also detail. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit. Retail is to shop, on the one hand, means providing goods and services for customers' needs and wishes. Retail is also to play, let's call it gamification. Retail is also to train, call it sporting. Retail is also to educate, like cooking, baking, or dancing somehow. Retail is also to create, make your own individual product. Retail touches all five senses and touches our soul. So therefore, retail will never be dead. What is or will be the new role of retail is the headline. What will be the role in the retail real estate industry, in the shopping center industry? We want to discuss with our famous panelists today. Interesting wise, all of us, all these five people in the panel are from their origin retailers. Reinhard is selling wine. Everybody knows that, good one. It's even better year by year. Markus Weil, we know each other, let's say, more than 30 years, I have to say, because we have met when you have been in a hypermarket company. I was brand new releasing manager at that time. Chris is well known for everyone, so maybe he can start his introduction a little bit from the very beginning. And Cindy Anderson, you called it newbie in that rows, so welcome. Cindy is the CEO of Inca Centers, coming from IKEA, and I would love to start with the introduction of you, Cindy. So welcome, and give us a little insight what you have done and what you want to do at Inca Centers. Cindy, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, and it's a privilege to be part of this panel today. I think it's so much exciting competence around the table here, and I'm also super curious, of course, of all the questions, hopefully, that we will get from the people that are joining in, so we make this an interactive dialogue as well. So my name is Cindy, and I joined Inca Centers in September last year. I've spent previous to joining Inca Centers, I was spending some 13 years at IKEA, primarily in the range and supply part. And had a good introduction then, going from the retailer side to the commercial real estate business, with some 5 months of a good introduction together then with Gerard Groner, who I then succeeded on February 1st this year. So I'm super excited of also then joining on this exciting journey, which in many ways is very connected to what I've been working with before. It is really about being close to people, understanding the needs, the dreams, and also thereby designing solutions, products, offerings that live up to that, basically. So that's what I'm most excited about, is actually creating the future of meeting places that we're set out to do at Inca Centers.
Thank you very much. Must be a sign that you joined from a retail side to the real estate side. Maybe there's a similarity to Markus. Markus, welcome. There's also a little change in your career. You stepped up within Spar Group. Could you give us a little insight what you're doing now? Markus, welcome.
Welcome, Klaus, and all the others. It's nice to be in this discussion here. Klaus knows me very long because I started in retail, really in food retailing in a German company. Then I changed to shopping center business, did Europark Salzburg and others. And then from 99 on, I was 9 years long responsible and CEO of a hypermarket chain. So this I did until 2007. And then this company invited me to develop a shopping center branch within Spar Group, where there was it was totally new, to give it a new shape, and called Spar European Shopping Centers. I did until end of last year. We developed 30 big shopping centers, and I think we are in Austria a famous company. And right now I stepped aside and again to retail, but I'm still responsible for the big scale real estate, and I have in my responsibility all the non-food activities of Spar, not in the hypermarkets, but the non-food, for example, as service, but also innovation we will do in this part. And aside from that, I'm also responsible for all the processes we have in our company. So also all the processes in food business. So that's a very interesting insight, and have a very deep view into our company. And that's very interesting. So the board of Spar, which is an Austrian privately owned company, has 5 members. And so I'm a little bit the non-food part in that.
Super, thanks very much, Markus. And I think we should come back to the topic of innovation, what comes next within Spar Group. Thank you so much. But I have to ask you one thing, because we are still in the pandemic times, and now we are more than 12 months living in that, I would say, circumstances. What is your personal most important key learning after 12 months living in pandemic? What do you think, and what was your biggest surprise, what you have experienced?
I don't want to overstretch the pandemic, because the biggest surprise for me was that we are still in the pandemic. That it is lasting so long, I did not expect. And all those negotiations with tenants, you are the third time in the third round with them, and that makes everyone tired. But I don't want to talk about that. What really astonishes me is that the people, the customers, like to have values and sustainability. We're in a crisis. But on the other hand, we see a big shift in all the customers that love to have quality, also in the aspect of quality with philosophy, sustainability, and value. And this really astonishes me, because I thought maybe there's a bounce back of price and anything. Yeah. No, it's different. And that's really heavy. And you see it. And I think it's more the combination between online information, digitalization, and looking into retailers and see, do they have values? And I think if you have values, you have a big advantage right now. That's what I think.
Great statement. Thank you so much, Markus. Sounds very interesting. And we come back to that topic, I'm pretty much sure. We have Mr. Retail International with us, Chris Igwe. And what is your biggest surprise out of that? And give us some little information about your career, but I'm sure everybody knows already.
Well, surprisingly, thank you, Klaus. Lovely to be on with yourself and Markus and Cindy, and obviously Reinhard in the background. You'd be surprised, there are still people on this planet who don't know me in the retail world, which I understand, but some people who know me are just shocked by that idea. So maybe I'm not as famous as I think I am. My background very quickly is I spent 10 years of my career initially as a civil engineer, working on major international projects that won awards. So in fact, I'm a little bit younger in the retail sector, having joined Foot Locker, and that's where my retail journey began, and then on with Gap as head of real estate for Europe. So I've learned from the ground up, as you can imagine, coming from civil engineering, major global projects into retail, starting at the ground floor and then working my way up from there. So essentially what I spend most of my time doing over the past few years is advising retailers and brands on their expansion or repositioning strategy, working with landlords, investors to understand what the best tenant mix might be for their existing or future centers. So it's really getting involved in all stages of the retail process. In terms of your question, like the pandemic is there, we're not going to talk about that. For me, I found two things that are quite surprising and I'd like to think we can learn from as an industry. The first is that we talk a lot, but we don't listen. Everybody's talking, and everybody is talking at the same time, not listening to each other, and therefore we're not necessarily progressing. So I think if we can learn to stop, hold our thoughts, listen to other people, because we have one mouth and two ears. So with the two ears, we're supposed to be working harder at listening, but we're not. That's the main thing I would say that I found surprising. And the other is just that we're not joined up in our thought process across the globe either. So I think, and then that's whether it's retail or anything else, we're in a state where we have a great opportunity to learn from each other, and we're not choosing to do that right now. So those are my thoughts, Klaus.
Great statement. I thank you so much, Chris, for that. And I love that word. We have only one mouth, but two ears. And maybe there's a reason why. That's good to know. Cindy, if I would love to ask that questions towards you as well. What was your big surprise and key learning out of that 12 months, knowing that you are a little bit, you are in the industry, not so long for the shopping center industry, but what was yours?
I think if I would echo Marcus, of course, a big surprise is the time, of course, of the pandemic, and also realization that we still have challenging times ahead. But I think if I would say one thing that has maybe not surprised me, but inspired me, has been the adaptability. I think the way that we've seen adaptability in people, changing behaviors, also quickly adapting to new circumstances, new realities, as well as the businesses. I think we have seen both within our industry, but also generally in retailing. I think this level of adaptability to also then turn to the online channels, develop new services, and also, of course, big adaptability when it comes to leadership. So I must say that having that word as the kind of centerpiece of my inspiration, that also creates a lot of opportunism, but also confidence in the future, because I also believe with an adaptability that we can create, rather maybe predicting, I think we can create the future that we would like to see.
Very good. Thank you so much, Cindy. So if you talk about the new retail, the new role of retail, and maybe the new role of shopping center, Cindy, we see a lot of changes for sure. What do you think? What kind of changes will show up? I've seen that Ingka Centers has bought a lot of new plots and real estates, also internationally, especially in US or Canada, for example. What is your point of view? What is your view on that? What could show up in the industry in the near future?
I think for us, I think at the Ingka Centers, even if we would not focus much on the pandemic today, I think the pandemic has not changed our direction, what we actually think is the right recipe for the future. It has accelerated it, but it has not changed the rule book for us. And some years back, we were setting out on a journey to move from then more conventional shopping centers into meeting places. As we changed also, how we are no longer calling our centers shopping centers, we're calling them meeting places. We have meeting place managers leading those spaces. And the big change that we also believe in is that people will continue to seek experiences, but we also need to create spaces that are just not transactionally based, but also spaces where people can come together, that are community focused, where you can experience, you can socialize. So there will be much more mixed use than what we've seen in the past of a more conventional shopping center. So I think that's also guiding us now in the future for Ingka Centers, is to continue this journey to develop, to fine tune, and to create relevant meeting places in the communities we're operating in.
Interesting. So that means that you engage much more with your customers in the near future. So, and what have to be done that how can tenants or landlords, because maybe you have two heads on your head, how can landlords or tenants engage more with their customers, or how can they delight them? What's your point on that?
I think it comes back again to being in tune with what people are looking for, and that goes for any business, right? In many ways, that you stay, in par as a minimum with also what people expect. And I think they're going then from a more landlord tenant model into more partnerships. I think it's also about actually creating strategies for how you are creating experiences, how we are testing and trying new services that also adds more convenience to people in the community. So it's really about being much more close together as a tenant and a landlord, being partners on the journey, and also then creating much more common strategies. And here I think we have a big opportunity also to expand, you can say, going down from a more physical space to also creating much more omni strategies together that will also serve much more the multi-channels forward.
Do you have a nice best practice or example for us?
Yeah, but we have actually, I think also, as I said, during the pandemic, I think many of these things have been accelerated for us. And these were things we already had, in mind that we wanted to do. But if you, just in China, one of our meeting places, we very quickly, it was 100 days, we launched an online marketplace also to make sure that we could kind of expand the offering also beyond the visit to the meeting place. We also have had good examples on creating services such as food delivery apps when the food and beverage had to close, and for customers then visiting the centers or being less able to do so. We also been working a lot, of course, with experiences. We opened in Italy in one of our meeting places also something called Emotion Hall, which is much more experience-based. It's like a very interactive experience, and I think it's quite unique also for being in a shopping center environment that you do that, you provide that type of experience. So I think those are the type of models we've been just seeing accelerated during this past year, I would say.
Wonderful, great. I would love to also to forward that questions to Marcus and Chris. Marcus, what should be done from Spar Group to delight the customers or to engage with the customers? What are you doing these days to be successful?
I think it's an excellent point for us because our shopping centers are food anchored. And in these times, food anchored is a big advantage. And I think if you just are into the route of being more convenient with all your things you do, this is excellent for your customers finally. Yeah. What we learned, Spar is also a group that works together also within Spar with independent retailers as well. So we have a very good connection to the retailers. And I think what's happening now, as was already pointed out by Cindy, that we have acceleration. That means you have to be more entrepreneurial. You have to be more the one that is quick in the decision, is facing the situation and really takes decisions. So I think it's a different time. It brings into the real estate guys something where you think working together with tenants and retailers, that means that you have to think as they think. You have to have an imagination what they should be. So this is something where this combination is something I think we have a good advantage. Of course, we always have to say which is accelerated because of COVID, what is accelerated because of online. Yeah, and there are some trends where I say I'm still thinking that gastronomy is a very heavy trend right now. With all these problems we have right now, you can't see it, but I'm sure it comes more. And the other thing is, I think brands which are maybe industrial brands that have a good relation to the customers, they are also have an increase in what they are doing. So you have to look around your area in some way be more regional and catch them for your center. So I will tell you a story about a company that does a very interesting thing right now.
Interesting. May I ask you about, let's say, operational excellence? So if you say everything is accelerating, how is it to improve operational excellence these days to be ahead from all the other ones? How do you see that in managing the shopping malls, in managing the retail chains? What's your point of view?
I think Meeting Place is a good example, or maybe if all the hotels are closed right now, we can be a little bit bringing a hotel service to our customers. Yeah. Service is something that's very important. And for example, we call our information in the hypermarkets right now reception, because people can go there and they get a service. And we work together with all those companies that have excellent service. You know, I love Fielmann, for example, because he's also service orientated. So I think what we should also do, we should bring those services in the mind of our customers. Yeah. But excellent, I also have to say, and we can't negate COVID. All our centers were tooth-proof, you know, maybe you help me with translation, so that the hygiene has a very high standard. I don't want to talk about it, but this is also something, this time is something where you have to look at your customers, that they feel safe when they when they go into your meeting places. Yeah, that's important.
Thank you very much. Chris, from your point of view, are there fantastic international examples how to delight customers, how to engage with customers from retail side? Do you have any idea?
A few ideas, obviously not enough time to cover all of them, but I think to just piggyback off what Cindy and Marcus said there, it is really about understanding what the consumer wants and needs. So, you know, our industry, as we all know, has been built off the idea of more of a transactional relationship than a relationship that brings around a sort of engagement, that feeling that we understand the consumer, or the consumer feels that she is understood. For decades now, we have operated the other way. It's in my store, or it's in my shopping center, come and buy it. Now people are looking for way more. So to understand the consumer and what her expectations are, and then fulfill those wants and the needs, which are not necessarily the same, and not necessarily the same all the time. So once we differentiate those, we'll have a better feeling of the direction to go in. And then it comes into, and I fully agree with Marcus, and that's one of, you know, my big issues, if you like, is service, or the lack of service. I think, again, as an industry, we've got, and this is brands as well as owners, we've got lazy about proper service, or the service levels that we want to see. Let's face it, if we go, whether it's to a restaurant, a store, or a mall, we want to know that we come away feeling better about that experience. So we want to know that the staff have looked after us. And that's the other piece I think is really important, is the staff. We should be investing a lot more in the training of our staff. I remember when I joined Foot Locker, obviously many years ago, 26 odd years ago, when I first started in the industry, and traveling through different countries, I was told that working in a store in certain countries is a very poorly viewed job. The parents weren't happy that their children were working in stores. We have to change that. We have to give the excitement and recognition to staff throughout the chain to know that they can offer the best possible service of themselves to others. And if we do that, it makes our industry way more attractive. So service is important, proper training of staff is important, but clearly all of that is wrapped up in understanding what the consumer really wants or needs, and not us pushing it out of the stores in order for them to embrace it.
Right. If you compare that internationally, Chris, do you see any differences in that US compared to Asia, compared to Europe, compared to UAE? What do we see in that? How do we see that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really fascinating question, in the sense that there are no real geographies that define a better concept or a less than good concept. A couple which I will give you because you've asked. Shinola, a US brand that sells jewelry, watches, cycles, but within the store, they also have an area that you can sit and listen to classical music. Well, classical, 70s, 80s, it's not classical for some people, but for those of us who enjoy that kind of music, it's an environment which is beyond just you coming in and buying something. That's one. Another one I would say is, which is one of my favorite concepts, in fact, in Europe, is O'Leary's, which is the restaurant out of Sweden. And the idea is it's a sports bar, but then you can do all sorts of sports things in it as well. You can eat, enjoy, relax. That's a whole different concept. And then they've done one, for example, in the Mall of Scandinavia, which is all about digital and entertainment and lifestyle, if you like. So that's all mixed together, which is great to see. And then in China, which I was privileged to be in December of 2019, a concept that I know Klaus, called Urban Revivo, which their flagship store in Shanghai is just it's an amazing place to be. Not to mention the Muji store just across the road, by the way. So it's hard to say. There are many that I love and enjoy, but I think if they get the ingredients right of making you feel welcome and engaged in what they're doing, that makes all the difference. It's not about the size physically, it's about what they offer, because Shinola has small stores, whereas the Muji flagship is a big store.
Thank you so much, Chris. Cindy, you are also operating globally, so you have some experience also in China and in other parts of the world, and it sounds that retailers and landlords need to engage also and define some, let's say, multi-channel strategies. How do you think could they support each other, or will the future partnership be more than a lease agreement between landlords and retailers to make that happen, what Chris and Marcus said so far?
But I think that also comes back. It's a great session, this. I think we can build so well on each other. But I really think it comes back also to what I shared previously as well, that I do believe that there are so many more things that we should develop and focus on together than as a landlord and a tenant and in our partnerships. And it's really about also, as you said, Chris, is to start from what people are needing. What are the dreams? What are the needs? And from there, we design the offer together. And in one way, it could be different. It could be how we create online communities. We know that that's a fantastic way to then expand the interaction and from the visit to the physical space. But it's also on how we can work together on different communities' agendas. It can be how we take topics such as sustainability further, also creating solutions that's also then helping the tenants to also then create more circular businesses, anything from the operations of the stores to kind of the offer provided. It's about probably then services, connected to the multi-channel, the Omni, etc. It could be click and collect, could it be hands-free shopping. So there are so many things that I think forward that we need to focus on together to create, to also live up then to the expectations that people have, also to then add value and also make then people want to come to the physical spaces. So I think for sure that it is all about partnerships in the future and creating those collaboration and ecosystems of different initiatives.
Do you think landlords have the ability or the capability to act more like retailers? Is there, let's say, a swing back or let's say a swing towards retailers from the real estate side? Or is it just a mix and match?
I think for us, if I think about how we are looking at it, I do think that there is an advantage, at least I would like to see it like that, also coming then from being part of Ingka Group, also having then the retailer mindset into the transformation that we are making. That could mean, of course, that you as a landlord also, we are creating new type of services, revenues, etc., which is much more business to consumer than maybe what we've been doing in the past. And there, I think that the retailer mindset will be super important forward. And in the end of the day, it's really about, it comes back to people. It's about understanding customers. So I think it will be a combination of both. And
I love that word, a retailer's mindset, or to adapt to the retailer's mindset, because I think that's somehow, let's say, successful for the near future. Marcus, coming to a word, because you said Spar is anchoring their malls with a big hypermarket or supermarket, so that leads to the discussion of size matters. Is it still the case for retailers as well, for shopping places or malls, that size matters? Is everything still leasable or fillable or to be occupied? And what differentiation do you see in the near future? How do we handle, or how do we cope size?
There, right now you can see there's a big change in the attitude of the customers. Due to the fact that COVID is there and due to the fact that online is there, I think there's really a big change. And in the past, maybe we expected the bigger the better. I think it's the more it fits, the better it is. You know, we really see also mid-sized cities where the people love the neighborhood shopping center, because it really has the right tenants, that's clear, the right services and everything, but it's theirs. And that's what changed. It's maybe the more tech we have, the more touch the people like, as it was John Osborne in the 90s when he wrote about that. And I think that's really, we should donate those centers to the people and have also think about why should this center be donated to the people? And then you see that there's really a differentiation in the catchment area. You know, we look at these things and see where the people are coming from. And right now you could see that's a big shift, that there really is a big change how the catchment areas work. Of course, it's a little bit to COVID as well, but it's something to see light and dark in this time is very interesting. So I think, yeah, size matters, but having the right size is more important. And then have a good atmosphere, a good, where people love to be. This is also important. And what I say is be individual enough. Don't be exchangeable. If you do a center, why don't get a lot of those touches that are regional inside? If you donate something, give it from your heart. And that's, I think, it depends. The architecture, the name, the tenant mix, the people that are there, and especially the gastronomy. Do they reflect the area, or is it a different thing? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Thank you so much. Cindy, I see you agreeing to Marcus' words. Would you love to add something?
No, I think it's just spot on also on my thinking on it, that it's about being relevant, right? It's about starting from an opportunity to be close to as many people as possible, and from there you design also the offer that you need to provide. And you could probably say that in many ways, from our perspective, we probably will have a different portfolio of developments, some of them being small urban developments, some being larger schemes. But in the end of the day, we start from the opportunity and the relevance, and then we design the meeting place according to that.
May I ask an additional question, Cindy? You have malls in Russia, you have malls in China, you have malls in now also in US, Canada, and of course Europe. But there are huge differences, right?
But I think if I would have the starting point, that I think commonalities among people are greater than differences. I think that would always be the starting point for me in anything. And I think that's the beauty, that we share much more in common than we actually share things that are different across the globe. So for us, I think it will be and continue to be a mix of different the schemes that we are developing. And so we are not trying to we're not defining it market by market in that sense, or trying to label a market, being in certain size of a meeting place or smaller, but we really we focus on, first of all, what we want to stand for, what is the uniqueness that we bring as Ingka centers with our meeting places, And it's really about taking the human perspective, putting people in the center. Then we go into the community where we are getting as close to as many people as possible. And from there, we also find what's relevant and what's important in that community. What are the needs, what are the desires, and then we design the format according to that. So you will see, as you say, we have smaller urban developments now also then in cities like London. We just recently announced last week that we also enter in Canada for the first time. And then we also just some months back, we also shared the news that we will enter India in Noida. And that will be a larger scheme that we're developing. But what's in common is really that we put people in the center of what we are developing. We're starting from that. And how can we make a difference to the community that we're entering?
Thanks so much.
Klaus, can I jump in? Do you mind?
Yeah, I would love to forward a question to you, Chris, because you may add something, but I would love to talk about, with you about sizing in the retail side. But please start.
Yes, I was going to jump in on that anyway. So we are aligned in our minds and thoughts. I think we have to differentiate between developments, so shopping centers, and whether in outlets, retail parks, whatever, and in relation to the retailers and brands, because the question would be different, and I'm sure that's where you were going. So I would say size is important, but it's no longer the case, because today what we're finding out more and more, especially in certain cities or certain centers that have developed and grown on the back of international trade or international tourists, have had to flip that towards a local consumer, a national customer, or indeed a customer base around their centers. So I think maybe in the past it was all about, yes, build it and they will come, make it as big as you can. You still need the dominant centers. Absolutely, I agree with that. Dominant shopping centers, but they have to have the right tenant mix to be successful. But then you've got smaller projects, smaller, as Cindy said, urban projects perhaps in city centers, on the edge of cities, which are smaller, but the tenant mix and the ingredients from green spaces right the way through to the customer care, customer service, concierge, whatever you call it, is very different and focuses on that consumer. So if we get the mix right, then it's way more attractive going forward than it was in the past. If I talk about retailers, as you said, yeah, when we look at, the likes of, they go without saying, Apple and their Apple stores, or you look at the Inditex group and what Zara has done, for example, or even for me, I would use one here in Paris, which is Colette. You may remember the Colette concept store, which sadly closed after 20 years of existence. In that store, Colette was able to create an experience on a regular basis through changing merchandise, doing partnerships, collaborations with small or big brands, designers, and so on, and creating that unique concept and feature within the store. Sadly, Colette is no longer there. There are a few examples around the world, but nobody's ever reached that level of achievement. But I think that's about, it's not so much size, it's about what is created within the space, whether it's a shopping center or a store. That is what attracts people to come to it. And we can do a much, much better job going forward because, as Cindy said at the beginning, one of the big things is change. We have indeed seen change in our industry, and it's all for the better. And I think if I can add one further layer in, it's about, and I'm excited to see this, about digital and technology and innovation being brought into not only stores, but also into shopping centers and so on. How do you include that digitalization, innovation, and technology to create exactly what you need to be a great experience, in fact? So that's what I would contribute to that comment.
Super. An additional question, Chris. So do you think there is a certain kind of minimum offers or minimum number of stores needed for a successful development?
Ooh. No, the short answer is no, there isn't. I think we have gone from the vast development that brands have had over the years, from the US to Asia to Europe, there is no minimum. It's about creating one or a few spaces. We may, I think, go back to, as many brands did in the sort of early 2000s, was a major city strategy, as they called it. So, you know, it's about Shanghai, London, Paris, Madrid. I think that's going to come back, and that's going to be a feature. But then they're going to have to take everything that they have, which is the best of that brand, and put it into those locations. And by the way, I'm not talking about size. So as I've learned over the years, flagships are not necessarily about, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 square meters. It's about how you make a 100 square meter space into the very best that that brand has to offer. If you look at another brand that I like, and I'm sure you know, Klaus, is Globetrotter in Germany, which is all about outdoor concepts and products. They've got some phenomenal stores, and the way in which they make that, okay, it's a large store, but you can enjoy the experience within that outdoor experience indoors. So it's a variety of things, but no, we're not going to see vast expansion because retailers and brands can't afford it. And I don't think the consumer's there with the online capabilities that we have. What we're going to see, and many major brands have started doing that, is integrating the e-commerce online business with their physical footprint so that the two marry up in a very seamless manner for the consumer to enjoy.
Thank you so much. The good thing is we have a first question from the audience, and I would love to read it from a good friend. I read the question, and maybe you could choose who will answer that. He says, landlords should focus more on save money during the construction time, which is interesting. This will drop rents, and in the same time, landlords should force us retailers, he's a retailer, to invest more in store layout, live interaction with our clients, creating a buzz. Every retail must have a buzz. You could define it by yourself. This could be the best tenant mix. What do you think about that? Start thinking with the development, and then try to, let's say, shift the investment into different categories. That's my interpretation. Markus?
It depends. I think you should first of all define what is the purpose of this real estate development. Is it something very urban, very high class? So I wouldn't save money at that point. There you shouldn't spend money too much. But a different thing is if we just opened a center in Hungary, which is very straight for 10 tenants usage, flat shopping center. So there we saved money. So I think it depends what is the role of the center, and if it's a standard, then save it. Yeah, I think nobody would if in the long run you couldn't survive if you spend too much money. I don't think that the rent of the tenant is something that has any connection with spending and investing in your building costs. This is not finally true, but I think the tenant pays what the turnover brings and what the value of the center brings to him. So sometimes centers are overinvested, that's right. Sometimes the tenants don't pay enough for the good place they have.
Thank you. Another question has arisen. So glad to hear that gastronomy is still important and that we need more spaces for socializing. He's totally agreeing, which is good. Yes. Are the panel, so the question is forwarded to you all, expecting to see more traditional retail operators incorporating an element of gastronomy into their stores? How will they as landlords react to this? Will they support it to drive guest experience, or will they discourage it in order to protect the gastronomy tenants? Interesting discussion has to do with new retail developments or retail, let's say, life cycles. So how do you see that? What has to be done from landlord side? Who would love to start to answer?
Let me kick it off. Let me just say,
you're smiling, please start.
Let me say, I mean, it's having some gastronomy in stores is not new. It has been better provided over the past few years. So when you look at one that comes to mind is L'Occitane, in their flagship stores that they've done in Paris, London. They've put in a kind of food, well, more macaroons and that sort of experience. Or I mentioned Shinola earlier on. There are other brands I could think of, but it's more of a feeling of creating an environment for the consumer to be more engaged in. So these ideas of coffee shops or coffee areas, which, by the way, for example, in supermarkets or hypermarkets, they've been doing that over the past few years as well, to create areas for a little bit of food and beverage. I don't personally think that the landlords should disapprove of that, because I don't think it really changes a great deal in what they're doing. And I don't think it's necessarily negative, so long as the gastronomy area, food and beverage area, is protected by the best possible environment that is being created for the customer. So I think it's two different things, but indeed we should continue to develop the food and beverage component, but to a higher quality than perhaps what we have been used to in the past. Now that may be kind of provocative, because there are some concepts that are really good and do what they do, but there are many who've been around for a long time and have not improved their concept, their design, or indeed their food and beverage offer. So those would be my thoughts at this stage, which I would contribute. I think it's important to allow additional components to be brought into a store if it fits the concept, but it's the brand themselves who are going to define that first. And so long as it doesn't become another addition to the lease contract debate, which we already have around e-commerce, and where the sales are captured in store, out of store, which is a whole different hornet's nest in itself. But I think retailers should be allowed to develop their concepts in the direction they feel works best.
Great answer. So thank you for that. Chris, means brand building, brand awareness, and brand quality is very important. Not jumping on each running train is not necessary. So therefore, it depends, and it should be managed. As Cindy, may I ask this question? So we see a lot of retail concepts, as mentioned already, and we see a lot of different shopping malls. But what is the product life cycle of these modern malls? How long do they really last, and what has to be done to change, and what will be the consequence out of the current generation of malls? You have a huge portfolio. How do you see that?
I think this would go for any business. I think it is about being relevant and in tune, and also keeping up to the speed of change that's happening, right? So I think it's very difficult to say that there is one life cycle that would be applicable for all shopping centers, and then you set the time on that. I think it's the capability of a shopping center operator to constantly develop and improve the offer, the mix, the content, the services, the experiences, that they live up to the expectations then of people that are visiting them, right? So I think that it will be the level of adaptability, the level of flexibility that you also build into the meeting places that will be determining, and also is setting the kind of length of the life cycle in the future. And here, change has always happened, right? Change is positive. I think the speed of change today is much greater than what it ever has been before, and the speed of tomorrow would be faster than what it is today. So here, I think it puts an increased pressure and positive pressure to be in line with that speed of change. But I don't think there is a set time of a life cycle. If we look on shopping centers of today, I think that becomes, it goes back to how those are being led and developed.
Thank you so much. Cindy, there's a question which goes directly to your side, because you're working internationally. You mentioned India, and there's in the audience someone who would love to know how you manage the cultural, let's say, differences within that countries. How could you organize it from scratch successfully to go into these kind of countries? Is it a challenge? Is it an experience which is also already existing in the company, or how do you enter India?
I think that goes for every new community that you're entering, that you have to be close, have the ears to the ground. Maybe it goes back to also what you, Chris, started out this session with saying, you know, to have very big ears and to understand, and also be developing our meeting places then with the local communities. And I think we have a fantastic actual process for doing so that we call the meeting place making, which means that we are involving people that live close by, we involving other stakeholders into design process of that meeting place, not only what it should look like, but also what it should contain and what it should bring as value to the community. So I think it's about a lot about involving, co-creating and listening. That's really super important.
Thank you so much. I would love to touch an issue which was mentioned before, sustainability. I think one of the biggest trends we are faced at the moment, and I think it's worthwhile and valuable to talk about that. Cindy, again, if you would love to start, sustainability is more and more important for brands, customers, and of course the operators of malls. What are you doing from your, let's say, global point of view, from Ingka Centers, to make the industry more sustainable?
I think this is, of course, a multidimensional question in that sense. First, it is, of course, how we are developing our meeting places, ensuring that they're meeting the sustainability standards. And it's also, of course, about the offer that we have in the meeting places and how we can promote the more sustainable offer. And here, last year in November, we had something we called the Love Your Staff for Longer campaign, where we, together with partners and tenants, we were also then really trying to put the focus on, instead of just buying at a low price, ensuring that you also have, we focus on conscious consumption. And then, of course, it's also related to the services and the extra additional new concepts that we're bringing into the centers, and that can be circular hubs. We have also created a concept like that in some of our meeting places, and we will continue to do that. It's also about nudging. I think we talked a lot about food today, but how do we ensure that we have a food offer that's also both more sustainable, and also then how do we work with questions such as reducing waste of food, etc. So it's actually many components. It's both about providing the, nudging towards the better offers in terms of sustainable choices. It's also about the operations and also new services, repair, circularity, etc. So we're working on this very intensively, and we believe this is one of the big questions actually forward for us, where the commitment is super high, and it's also time together with all partners and tenants that we're really setting out on a strong journey together. Super. Sounds that is on top one of your agenda. Absolutely.
Markus, I know that Spark Group is also doing a lot on ESG, means economical, social, and governance point of view. So sustainability, what is Spark Group doing or SAS doing?
No, of course, we have a long tradition in these issues. You remember 2 of our centers were the most sustainable centers in the world. We won, and I think, yes, it's in our genes that we try to be sustainable. But I think a lot of things are happening in the food retailing part. Of course, reducing sugar, reducing palm oil, reducing those terrible garbage in these things, and plastics, get it out of the of the products. And I think there's a big leverage in a food retailer, because he touches every day millions of customers and in their behavior. So this is something where we real estate guys only can look at those Spark guys that have a bigger leverage. That's true. In the building part, a lot of those sustainable things just match also the economical part. And so there is no difference. If you have a long-term interest in those things you're doing, of course you have to be sustainable. And as well as from the operative part, as from the thing that you say, where do I build my centers? An interesting thing happens right now is that public transport is really suffering these days. And I'm not sure if it returns in the same way as it was, because in the past we really saw those centers that have public transport situation. And, you know, transport is something really sustainability matter, an issue. And I think, I'm not sure if this returns in the same way, because people are right now getting a little bit back of driving individual. And, you know, if the habits change, it sometimes takes a longer time to bring them back. So a lot of things are happening right now, but I think something you can do as a real estate guy, you can decide, do you want a sustainable concept, or do you prefer someone who has in India child work and everything? So this is something where you have to really think about what's important, and can I decide like this, or is the market that decides? You know, how much can you pre-decide? Very interesting question. I can't answer here because you can't talk about your tenants in a different way. But I think this is also important. Yeah, that's it. I think
very good questions, Marcus, and we will raise the questions when we have a landlords round next time. So let's ask Chris whether from sustainability will play that big role in the near future from retail side. Chris, what's your point of view on that before we come to the last round?
Yes, it will, Klaus. There are already brands who I'm sure many people know about, who have already been working in this sustainability improvement environment, whether it's Adidas that we've heard a lot about and seen a lot about over the past 3, 4, 5 years, H&M to mention but a couple in different sectors, obviously sporting goods, and then in fashion as well. So, you know, very much public statements around working around that. But I think at the other end of the spectrum, a company probably nobody has heard of yet called the Bad Seeds Company out of Italy is really working to infuse, if you like, through the hemp products that they're using into the clothing and apparel and other areas, of course, that could be in the health and wellness sector as well, which will be coming through. But they're a startup. So I think the key right now is, and I use that deliberately because it's kind of a concertina between the big players, yes, but then there are the smaller startups, ingenious ideas and technology that will filter through the whole sustainability role and process. It is an important conversation. And to be honest, Klaus, it goes beyond that because it's right the way through the entire distribution channel. So from the sourcing in whichever part of the world, right the way through to seeing them in the shopping centers or in the stores, everything is going to have to be unpicked and looking at optimization to ensure that it is improved, not only from a cost point of view, but quality and of course, indeed, sustainability overall, that we waste less than we are currently using. So retailers and brands are very conscious of it. I don't think, like anything, it's going at the same pace as one might think, because there's a huge cost attached to it, as we all know. And right now, the retailers and brands are more about survival than they are about, you know, strategic choices and decisions, even though many of them are already including that in their 5 to 7 year plan, which I do know is happening. So it is a process. It's in motion, which is the good news.
And thanks so much. Unfortunately, we have a lot of more questions to be answered, but time is running, and we have still some seconds to go with the last round. And I would love to ask you all, as a last round, what is your favorite retail concept or your favorite retail star which could succeed in the near future, and why will it succeed in the near future? Chris, would you love to start?
Oh gosh, I'd love to start, but there are just so many. It's hard to say.
Just one.
I mean, I would have to go. I'm going to go with one, but it's kind of a positioning between old and new. I would say, for me, the concept that I love and always have loved is the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. It's not going anywhere. That's why I think it's got future, it's got legs, it just needs to evolve, develop, whatever it needs to be. But I would have to go for the Grand Bazaar because it's been around a long time, and it'll be around for much longer, and it's a very exciting place to shop and experience.
Thank you so much, Chris. Marcus, what's yours?
I think, you know, we have a lot of stores in Spa, you know, Teatro Italia in Venice, a store I love. You can go there and it's incredible what food attitude people have there. But I want to talk about a different thing. It's the next store to come in Europark. And it's very interesting because near food is a very great experience. I think near food is something where new brands are coming up. And we are just working with an entrepreneur from Salzburg on a concept that works in spices, you know, and I think this is something, a spice world, where I think there could be something similar to some coffee concepts or something like that, because cooking is so interesting right now. And what's happening to, you know, we have two star cooks in Europe, 2 restaurants with stars, but this is an addition, having one that really has a new attitude to spices that comes from the world. And I think, you know, it's something doesn't work on the internet. You go there and you smell it and you taste it and everything, and then you take it home and cook it. Of course, then later it emerges. I love new concepts and I love entrepreneurial attitudes. And this is something where my blood gets
boiled.
Yeah.
Fantastic. A very nice link to the Grand Bazaar of Chris. And Cindy, yours. You can mention the second best. I know you.
Okay, so I would not say IKEA then. And of course, also as previous speakers were saying, there are so many fantastic concepts right now from all our partners that we are working with in our meeting places, also in other spaces, etc. But on the note of sustainability, I would like to say Retuna in Eskilstuna, Sweden, which is a recycling mall. And I had the privilege to visit it not too long time ago. And I think there's a lot of inspiration in actually how to create a circular shopping center or mall, like what they've been doing in Retuna. So I think if there would be one thing on sustainability, which has been a very present topic today, I think that's the inspiration I would bring with me to the future.
Thank you so much. This is incredible that time is running that fast. So I have to thank you so much. Before I hand back to Reinhard, I would love to tell you also my favorite retail concept, which is Lego. You can now start thinking why it is the case. Maybe we talk about it in the next few sessions. But thank you so much to my panelists here. That was an incredible, lively, exciting discussion. Many, many key takeaways. And now I hand back to Reinhard for the last words. And I wish you all the best for a fantastic, bright retail future. Reinhard.
Thank
you, Klaus. Yeah. Many thanks from my side to this very extremely exciting panel. From my point of view, content-wise, one of the best panels we had up to now. Thank you very much. As mentioned at the beginning, we will send a summary in the next few days. We will make a summary, both a text and a short video. We send it out via our newsletter. Many, many thanks. It was great to the panelists. Many thanks to all of you for watching. And yes, greetings from Vienna. Last but not least, I wish you a great Easter weekend. Goodbye from my side and auf Wiedersehen. Hope to see you again. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sanjay. Bye, Klaus. Bye, Chris.
Bye, everyone.